You're about to hear words that land deeper than I love you. And the reason they work might be uncomfortable. Not because they're dramatic, but because they're the opposite. Simple. Almost too simple. The kind of thing you'd normally skip over if I just told you what they were. So here's what I want you to do. As I walk through these, don't just read them. Imagine your partner saying them to you in a moment when you actually need to hear it. Because that's where the difference shows up. That's when you'll understand why these words can do what I love you sometimes can't. They don't create pressure. They create safety. And that's what allows someone to finally let their guard down. There's a point in almost every relationship where nothing is really wrong, but something feels different. You still care. You still show up. You still say, I love you. But it doesn't land the same way anymore. Not because it isn't true, but because it's become familiar, like something both of you know is there, but no longer really feel in the same way. You know how they take their coffee. You know the tone in their voice when they're tired. You know the small habits that only exist between the two of you. And somewhere in all of that, in the intensity, quietly settles. The butterflies turn into routines. The excitement turns into stability. And for a lot of couples, that's exactly where confusion begins. Because nothing is broken. But something isn't connecting the way it used to. So you do what most people do. You try to bring it back. You say, I love you more intentionally, more consciously, hoping it will land deeper this time. And sometimes it does the opposite. Not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle shift you can feel. Something in them doesn't fully open. And now you're left wondering, did I say too much? Or did I just say the wrong thing? Because here's the part most people never think about. Love doesn't disappear in long-term relationships, but the way it needs to be communicated changes. What once felt intense now needs to feel safe. What once felt exciting now needs to feel real. And the words that used to work don't always reach the same way anymore. And this is exactly where most people get it wrong. One of you feels like, I'm expressing love. The other feels like, this is getting heavy. One of you feels closer. The other feels a subtle kind of pressure. Same words, same intention. Completely different experience. And the more you try to fix it by saying more, the less it seems to work. Because the problem isn't that you're expressing love. The problem is you're speaking your language, not theirs. And most people never realize that until they've already started losing the connection. And here's what nobody tells you about that. Fixing this doesn't mean saying, I love you better. It means saying something different. Something that doesn't sound like love, but feels like it. Every relationship runs on a kind of invisible translation system. Not based on logic, based on experience, on patterns, on what closeness has meant before this relationship ever existed. For one person, love feels like warmth. For the other, it can feel like expectation. For one, connection feels grounding. For the other, it can feel like something they might lose themselves inside. So when you say, I love you, your intention is closeness. But what lands can be something very different. It can land as responsibility, as emotional weight, as something they now have to live up to. And that's where distance begins, not because love is wrong, but because the nervous system underneath reads it differently. So the real question isn't, how do I say I love you better? It's this, what actually reaches someone? When those words stop working the way they used to. Because there are ways of speaking that don't create pressure, but still create connection. So instead of overthinking them, imagine hearing this in a moment where you actually need it. One of them is this, I've got you. On the surface, that sounds small, but for a lot of people, it lands deeper than almost anything else. Because most people don't struggle with feeling loved. They struggle with the feeling that when things really matter, they'll have to handle it alone. So when you say things like, let me know if you need anything, it sounds supportive, but it still requires something from them. They have to reach, they have to ask, they have to make themselves vulnerable first. And for many people, that's exactly the step that feels the hardest. I've got you removes that step. It doesn't ask for anything. It doesn't require them to open up. It just quietly says, you don't have to do this alone. Even if you don't say a word. No demand, no expectation, just presence. And that's why it lands. You can feel the difference instantly. One makes you brace, the other makes you breathe. And in relationships, that small difference changes everything. Because people don't open up when they feel managed, they open up when they feel held. And if you stay with that for a second, you'll notice something important. The next one works for the same reason, just in a different moment. Another one is this: you don't have to respond right now. Because most relationships carry a kind of invisible pressure. You reach out, and something in the other person already knows a response is expected. Not always consciously, but it's there. And for someone who feels that pressure easily, even small moments of connection can start to feel heavy. So instead of asking for engagement, you remove the need for it. I'm thinking about you. You don't have to respond right now. And suddenly, connection doesn't feel like something they have to manage. It feels like something they're allowed to step into, on their own timing. No urgency, no expectation, just space that still holds warmth. And this is exactly where most people get it wrong. I respect that, which sounds simple but is rarely done completely. Because most people don't struggle with saying they respect their partner. They struggle with actually meaning it when it matters, when the other person needs space, when they pull back, when they don't show up the way you expected. That's where respect is tested. I respect that only works when your behavior matches it, when you don't punish them for being honest, when you don't withdraw warmth because they needed distance, when they can feel that being themselves doesn't create a problem between you. Because for a lot of people, the deepest fear in relationships isn't losing the other person. It's losing themselves inside the relationship. And when that fear disappears, something changes. Now here's what all of this points to. None of these words try to pull someone closer. None of them create urgency. None of them ask for something back. They don't force connection. They create the conditions where connection becomes safe enough to happen. And that's the shift most people never make. They try to bring closeness back by increasing intensity, by saying more, by trying harder, by pushing deeper. But for a lot of relationships, especially over time, closeness doesn't grow through intensity. It grows through consistency, through emotional space that doesn't feel like distance, through knowing that being with you doesn't require them to perform or protect themselves. So instead of asking, how do I make them feel more? Ask this: what makes them feel safe enough to stop holding back? Because that's when connection actually changes. Not when you say more, but when what you say finally lands the way you intended. Maybe that's also why I love you feels so much bigger again when it's no longer carrying everything by itself. When it's supported by words that calm, reassure, and protect, it stops sounding routine and starts meaning something real again.